This is the fourth and final Bullet and Dove session of the year, and it is a very special session, dear to my heart, in which we'll take on the topics of Palestinian heritage, culture, and identity. Palestinian culture and identity have been forming over millennia, but our session today will highlight a very modern crisis Palestinian culture faces, which is the active destruction of Palestinian heritage that the Israelis heavily invest in so that they can appropriate and utilize a historic culture to lay claim to a narrative of belonging in a stolen land. Palestinians actively resist and fight that appropriation while continuing to create, to put amazing energy into the continued growth of their own culture and their own identity. And if you have joined us as an ally, we hope you'll leave this session with a richer understanding of Palestinian identity and heritage, cultural heritage, and how it is being attacked as part of a larger ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. We'll invite our amazing speakers to engage with us on some key questions, and the conversation will continue from there. Let me start with introducing who we have with us today. Shahid Kar'in is a Palestinian artist, poet, author, and founder of Peace is the Song. Her work weaves themes of survival, memory, and reclamation through a distinctly Palestinian lens. Welcome, Shahid.
Thank you.
Samar Abdrabu works with the nonprofit Made in Palestine and is the founder of Samarkand, a Tatriz initiative where she works to preserve and revitalize the traditional art of Palestinian Tatriz. Welcome, Samar.
Thank you, Morgan.
Farid Ta'amallah is a Palestinian journalist, farmer, and environmental activist from the village of Keri near Salfit. He writes about rural life, environmental heritage, and the daily realities of Palestinians living under occupation. Beyond journalism, he is active in community initiatives to promote sustainable farming and heritage protection. Welcome, Farid. By way of introduction, the Palestinian story on this land did not begin on October 7th, or even in 1948 when Jewish immigrants claimed more than 50% of historic Palestine as their new colonial state. Palestinians are an ancient people who have stood steadfastly on this land through many foreign occupations, and their story began long before the modern state of Israel. In fact, Israel has very little to do with the Palestinian people, land, or culture. It is a new settler colonial state and will ultimately be a brief but dark chapter in Palestinian history. It is so important to remember that the colonizer's story always features and relies on the colonized people as a main character to their narrative. But the colonized, the indigenous population who are participating here today, always boast and share a long and rich history that has no place in it for colonial characters. Palestinians and their rich cultural heritage stand alone, and we can and must speak about Palestinian cultural heritage in and of itself. Palestinian identity is deeply rooted in people's sacred and ancient relationship to this land. Expressions of culture come out of that relationship to land in terms of agriculture and the wild nature around them, crafts, food, songs, and more. So we'll start today with Samar. UNESCO listed Palestinian Tatriz as intangible world heritage a few years back. Can you begin this conversation by talking to us about the costumes of Palestine and specifically about Tatriz, its history, significance, motifs, its value as part of Palestinian identity?
Thank you so much, Morgan. And first of all, I would love to start this talk by acknowledging the traditional dress I'm wearing, which belongs to a Palestinian woman from Bethlehem who decided to sell her dress to gain some money because she was like in a bad financial situation, and I decided to buy it. And whenever I have a chance to wear this amazing top, I decided to wear it also today to show it to everyone who's joining. Um, well, you, Morgan, asked me to talk about Palestinian embroidery, tatreez, and whenever anyone asks me to talk about tatreez, I don't know where to start it from. Like this rich and beautiful art is so amazing and have a lot like of history and significance and importance that cannot be said in like in an hour or something. But I am always happy to and honored to talk about the trees and to acknowledge all the effort of Palestinian women who have created and preserved the trees all over the years. Um, well, Palestinian embroidery is the cross-stitch form of embroidery that was created by Palestinian women thousands of years ago. It is an old art, and it was created for so many different reasons. And one of them is documentation and celebrating the culture and the society. Palestinian women started doing tattoos on their dresses, as we call thobs in Arabic, and all the patterns, all the motifs that we find on the dresses were inspired by the Palestinian nature and landscape. And that's why whenever you see a Tatreez pattern, if you look closely and if you decide like to kind of read the dress, you will see a lot of trees, flowers, birds, and even like the stars, the moon, the mountains, the sea, all these different like natural landscapes of Palestine. And it's important to mention that every city in Palestine have their own significance, motifs, and patterns. Um, like the Palestinian cities on the coast, like they were all of the patterns were inspired by like the sea waves pattern, for example. Like the city of Bethlehem, we it's known for the Bethlehem star pattern, and so on. And it's not only like the patterns; it's also the like the colors of the dresses and the fabrics. Each color, each pattern, everything that is on this dress represents something and means something. Nothing that was made randomly. Um, Palestinian women were really creative, talented, and smart, and every piece they made, it was like it represented their story and their identity. Um, and like the reason I'm doing Tatreez and teaching Tatreez is that I want to preserve and to keep this amazing tradition alive. And you mentioned, Morgan, that it was recognized by the UNESCO, which was like a really important thing to acknowledge that it's not only like like about fashion or decoration or making something like beautiful pieces. It's like an archive of who are Palestinians. When you look at a dress, you can learn so much about Palestine just from one dress. Um, and yeah, and the fact that it is recognized by the UNESCO, it should be protected also by the UNESCO, which is sadly not it's not happening. We were losing a lot of Tatreez pieces during the genocide of Gaza and also like in West Bank. And this is the right time to talk about Tatreez and introduce Tatreez to everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Samar. That's a really good point that UNESCO should also be, or the UN should also be protecting that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for drawing all of the connections to land through the dress itself and Tatriz. Farid, are you with us now? No,
نعم أنا
not so
موجود.
much. Okay, amazing.
نعم.
Welcome, Farid. Farid, can you talk about the Palestinians' historic relationship to land, you yourself as a farmer, but also somebody who is very dedicated and passionate to preserving heritage? And tell us, talk to us about the attacks on land, so the Palestinian connection to land and why the Israelis target that. The Israeli attempts to break or deny Palestinians' relationship to their land. Why are they doing this? What is their goal here?
شكرا مورغان وشكرا على الاستضافة. أنا يعني لسوء الحظ ما عرفت أوصل كيري. أنا كنت في رام الله امبارح، وحاولت أوصل لكيري
Thank
اليوم،
you
بس
very
اليوم كان
much,
في
Morgan.
عملية
Thank you
والجيش
very much
الإسرائيلي
for
سكر
hosting
كل
me.
المداخل رام الله.
Unfortunately, I
فأنا
couldn't
الآن
arrive
يعني في
earlier to the
مكان
meeting because
بين
I was
حقول
in
الزيتون.
Ramallah
يعني المنظر
yesterday
حلو، مش
and I
سيء
had to
يعني، مش
pass
اللي
through a
شايفه.
checkpoint and I
يعني
tried to
أنا
arrive
جنبي
earlier,
هو
but
كروم
today there was a
الزيتون،
raid by the Israeli
وأنا بحكي
police
معكم
and they
يعني لسه
closed
ما
all the
وصلت
entrances
القرية.
into Ramallah. So I am
وهذه هي
now in the
بالضبط اللي
fields of the
بصير
olive
معنا
trees. It's
اليوم،
actually a beautiful scene. Unfortunately, you cannot see it.
وهو اللي بصير
Next
مع
to me, there are
الفلسطينيين
the fields
كل
of
يوم.
the
يعني
olive oil
من
trees,
الصعب على
and
الفلسطيني
I'm
انه
talking
يخطط
to you, and I
لحياته،
didn't even reach
يعني يقرر
my
يطلع من رام
village.
الله الساعة
And
8
this is
صباحا مثلا،
what is
نابلس الساعة 9
happening
صباحا
today,
مع
and this is
شغل
what we
وطبعا
want
هو
to
صعب.
shed
ولكن
light on
مش هذا
today.
موضوعنا، مش موضوعنا
Palestinians are
الحواجز،
suffering on a
ولكن هذا
daily
بالصدفة صار هذا
basis
الشيء اليوم،
because, for
وهو ممكن
example, if
يصير
they
مع أي
leave
فلسطيني.
Ramallah at 8 o'clock in the
بالنسبة
morning, they arrive to
للأرض،
Nablus at the end of the
يعني
day.
صعب
But
انه
this is not
نفصل
our
النضال
topic today. The
الفلسطيني
checkpoints is not our topic. So
والكفاح الفلسطيني عن
that was
الأرض.
a
يعني هي
coincidence,
الأرض
and it
هي
could
موضوع
happen to any
الأساسي
Palestinian.
للنضال. يعني
As
موضوع
for
أساسي
my presentation,
بديش أسميه
we
صراع
cannot
ولكن هو
separate
للمقاومة
the
ضد الاحتلال.
Palestinian struggle
كل
and the
خلافنا
steadfastness
أو
of the
كل
Palestinians from
المشكلة
the land itself,
القائمة الآن
because the
هي
land is
إنه
actually the main
الإسرائيليين
point of our struggle.
بيحاولوا
I'm not going to
يستولوا على
talk about
الأرض،
a conflict, I'm
ولكن
talking
بدون
about a
السكان
resistance to the
الفلسطينيين.
occupation.
فالخلاف
All
هو حول
our
الأرض وكل ما تعنيه الأرض. الأرض يعني بالنسبة
problem here
للفلسطينيين
is that
هي
the
الهوية، هي
Israelis
المكان اللي بيمارسوا فيه
are
الهوية والفولكلور
perseveringly
الفلسطيني
trying to
وعاداتهم
occupy the
وتقاليدهم،
land, but without the
وبينتجوا
Palestinian on it.
وبيتزوجوا
So
وبيخلفوا
the
وبيعيشوا.
problem here
فبالتالي
and the
موضوع الأرض
meaning of the land for Palestinians is related to their identity, to their folklore, to their traditions and
فصلوا عن
customs.
النضال. يعني هي
And
الأرض هي موضوع
where
الصراع
they
الأساسي. هذا يعني
marry,
أن
they bring
المزارعين
children
أو
to this life,
الفلاحين
and
هم
they
في عين العاصفة،
continue
يعني هم
living on this land.
المستهدفين بشكل أساسي
Therefore, the
من
land
عمليات
itself holds a
المحو
great value
والتدمير
to the
والإبادة
struggle of the
والتهجير.
Palestinians, and that's why it's the focal
الفلسطينيين
point
بشكل
of
عام
the
مستهدفين،
Palestinian
ولكن
struggle,
المزارعين
because they are
اللي
always in the
بيحرثوا
face of
الأرض
the wind. The
وبيزرعوها
Palestinians are
وبينتجوا،
the main target of this
هم بالضبط
Israeli
الهدف
occupation
الأول
based on genocide,
للاحتلال الإسرائيلي. وعلشان هيك
displacement,
بنشوف إحنا
and the
في الريف
Palestinians are
الفلسطيني
always
هناك حركة
targeted. However, the
قوية
farmers that are
من
the
المستوطنين
gatekeepers of the land itself
لتهجير
are the
الفلسطينيين من
main target
الريف،
of the
بالذات ما
Israelis,
يسمى مناطق
this
سي اللي
Israeli
هي بتمثل
occupation. And
حوالي
therefore, we say
66% من
that
الضفة
in the
الغربية.
rural areas
هناك
in
هجمة
Palestine,
إسرائيلية شرسة
there is
على
always a
المستوطنين. أنا
violent
اليوم وأنا ماشي
action
معكم يعني
from the
المستوطنين كانوا
settlers
بيهاجموا
themselves
الناس
to
على طول
displace
الطريق بين
the
رام الله
Palestinians
ونابلس.
from the land
وفي
that
كل
we call
مكان،
Zone
كل تلة
C, which
الآن،
is
كل
more than
جبل
80% of
في
the
الضفة
rural area in
الغربية هناك
Palestine.
مستعمرة
So we see a
تقام،
violent attack.
أقيمت
And I'm
سابقا أو
sure
تقام
you
الآن.
all saw that the
وعندما
settlers
نقول
are
الأرض
attacking the
أيضا
Palestinians
نتحدث عن
all the way
الهوية،
long
لأن
to
هي
Ramallah,
هوية
to Nablus,
الفلسطينيين. إحنا
and
زي ما
every
بنعرف
hill
الفلسطينيين
in
كانوا
the
بالنكبة حوالي 70% من
West
الفلسطينيين
Bank,
هم كانوا
you
مجتمع
will see that
زراعي
there is this
ريفي،
circle of violence. And when we
بيعيشوا
say
في
land,
القرى.
we are talking about the
فكل القرى
identity
حتى القفقاز
itself,
اللي حكت
because the
عنه سمر
Palestinian identity,
الثوب
as we
الفلسطيني هو
know,
مستمد من
before the
الزراعة.
Nakba in
يعني هي الزراعة
1948,
والأرض هي
most of the
جزء
Palestinians
أساسي من
were
التراث
farmers and they
والفولكلور
were living in
الفلسطيني.
rural
يعني لا يمكن
areas.
أن نحكي
So
عن
all these rural
أي شيء بالتراث
villages, even
الفلسطيني
the
بدون ما
ones that
نحكي عن
Sama
الأرض
talked about
والزراعة،
related
لأن هي
to the
مرتبطة في
Palestinian
بعض. لما تحكي عن
custom,
أغاني
is
الأعراس
related to the agriculture,
بنحكي
and agriculture
عن
is part of
السمسم
the
وعن
tradition
القمح وعن
and the
الزيتون
folklore of the
وعن صريف
Palestinians. We
الطول
cannot
اللي
talk
بروح
about tradition sign
بحب
without
الصبية
talking
عند
about the land and
العين،
the
عين المي
farming
ونبعة
and the
المي.
agriculture. It's
فبالتالي كل
related to
هذا التراث
everything. It's
الفلسطيني
to the
والفلكلور
weddings.
الفلسطيني
When
مرتبط
we
سواء
talk about a
بالزواج
wedding,
أو
we talk
بالحزن
about
أو
sesame seeds,
باستسقاء المطر،
and we also
بصلاة
use
المطر،
these
بأغاني المطر.
proverbs
كله
that
مرتبط
always
بشكل
use the land
أساسي
and what we
بالأرض
bring from this
والزراعة.
land, and
فالأرض
therefore the
والزراعة
Palestinian folklore
هي
that is
جزء
related to the
مكون
weddings or
أساسي
to
جدا
to a
في
sad
البيئة الفلسطينية،
occasion or
وهي
to the
تعتبر
songs that we sing in order
الحاضنة
to be
الرئيسية
showered with
للفولكلور
rains.
الفلسطيني.
It's
يعني لا
always
يمكن
related to the
نحكي
farm
عن أي
and to the
أنواع
agriculture, because
الموسيقى
this
الفلسطينية،
farming land
أغاني
is a main
الأمثال
point
الشعبية،
in the Palestinian
الطريز،
environment and
الرقص
is
والدبكة.
considered as
كل هاي
as
الأمور
the main incubator
التراثية
of
هي
this
مرتبطة
identity.
بالزراعة
We
ومرتبطة
cannot talk
بالأرض
about
والمناطق
music in
الزراعية.
Palestine, a song in
هذا
Palestine,
مهم، لأن
the
أنا
popular
كمان
and
شوي
the
بعرف شيء
folkloric
بحب أحكي لكم
traditions,
شوي
the
عن ما نحن
dabke, which is
الآن
a
في
folkloric
موسم
dance in
المطر،
Palestine.
بداية
They
موسم
are
المطر
all
بالزراعة.
related to
الآن
Palestine,
أنا
its
رايح دابا عشان
identity
أزرع،
and its
عشان بدي أزرع
agriculture
أرض.
identity.
نحن الآن
I
في
don't know
يعني في نهاية شهر 11
if I
وبداية
can
شهر
I have enough
12 بنبدأ
time,
نزرع
but
الأرض،
at the beginning of the
الزراعة شتوية أساسية
season.
للقمح والفول والبازيلا والسمسم
Now we want
عفوا مش
to
السمسم
seed the
باقي
land.
الأشياء المحاصيل
At the end
بنسميها
of
الشتوية إحنا الموسم الشتوي
November, beginning December, we
وكل شيء
start
مرتبط بالطقوس يعني في له
planting the
طقوس
seeds,
يعني إحنا كيف بدنا نعرف
especially
نزرع ولا ما
wheat,
نزرع إحنا اليوم
sesame
بنسمع المقصودات
seeds,
الجوية بس كنا زمان
time,
نعتمد أكثر على مشاهدتنا
everything
للطبيعة
that is
يعني
called winter
أمي
provisions.
كانت
And
ما
it is
تنزل
related
تزرع قبل
to
عيد لد
specific rituals.
عيد
We
لد
have to know
هو
when do
عيد
we plant the
مسيحي
seed or not.
ولكن أمي مسلمة
Before
بس
we
هي كانت
used
تعتمد في
to
المواسم
rely
الزراعية
on
على عيد لد
observing
كانت
the
بتراقب
nature
الطيور
itself. My mother,
بتراقب
for
السماء
example, she
في طيور معينة لما
didn't
بتيجي
plant
الطيور
any
هاي
seed before a specific Christian festivity. Even though she's a
احنا
Muslim,
بنبلش
she
نزرع
used to observe
إذا الطيور
the
وشكل السماء
birds
ولون
in the
السماء وريحة
sky. There are specific
الهواء
types of birds,
ريحة
for example, when they
الريحة
are
اللي بنشمها
migrating
بالهواء
and you see them in the
هي
sky, you
بالنسبة
know
لنا
that it's
مؤشرات على بدء موسم
now
الزراعة
the right time to plant seeds. So this is a tradition, and we start planting the seeds. So we even know the
Thank you,
smell
Farid.
of the wind
That's
itself. When we smell it, we know that these are
I'm not sure
indicators
if
that it is
I'm
time to
frozen.
plant our seeds in our land.
If I'm frozen.
أنا بسمعكم أنا أسمع جيدا يعني سامع كل شيء تقريبا وأنا جوا السيارة والكاميرا مفتوحة بس ما بعرف كيف أنتم شايفيني
I can hear well, even if my picture is frozen. And I am now inside my car and I have my camera open. I don't know if you can see me clearly or not, but I can hear you, so no worries.
Morgan, you're muted.
Yeah, it's a lot of pop-up windows as I just got kicked off of Zoom. And I'm back. Okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Farid. That was an incredible amount of information about a historic relationship. I mean, it's something that I'm always saying is that every expression of cultural heritage and identity goes back for Palestinians to a relationship to land and agriculture. And it's so great that we have somebody like Farid who is kind of safekeeping and preserving a lot of that knowledge and sharing that through his writing. And when Farid mentioned that even before 1948, I mean, this is all ancient knowledge, and I just think of the word resilience. And Shahid, in one of your reels that I was watching, I saw you say, "My story is a story of resilience." And I think a lot about this word and about the concept of sumud, steadfastness in Palestine. And I often feel like the world calls Palestinians resilient. This is a word used a lot to talk about Palestinians. And that somehow it gives this sense that we can just keep bouncing back on this area of the world from occupation. I was going to switch into Arabic right there. I had to catch myself. One occupation after the next for century, for the last millennia, and that Palestinian people are so resilient, they can just bounce back. And I think that's really a problematic way that the word resilient is used to suggest this about Palestinians, like how much should they take? I wonder for you who uses that word a lot, what does it mean for you to identify as a Palestinian woman, calling yourself, identifying as resilient?
Morgan, people think when somebody says I'm resilient, it's a compliment or it should be a way of celebrated. The thing is, it is, for me, resilient, it's a purpose, it's a calling. Resilient in a world where they try to diminish and erase us, a world where at the age of 13, my classmate came with a world map and he put it in front of me and looked at me. Where is Palestine? Show me on the map. The resilience to look at him in the face and say, Palestine exists and I know where it is. I don't have to prove it to you and show it to you, is growing up fighting an endless war of wanting to be recognized, appreciated. It's about resistance. It's not about endurance. It's about identity. For us Palestinians, this is part of who we are, where we want to be seen. in a world where they're trying so hard to erase every fragment or everything that connects us to reality, to this world that we live in. It's my resilience is not softness. It's the fact it is not about compliance. It is the decision to remain whole in a world determined to fragment us.
Yeah.
It's painful to have to live all your life trying to prove that you deserve every human right, that you deserve basic human rights. And I know that I speak from a place where I'm so confident of who I am, and even my background, I'm so proud of being Palestinian.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
Mhm.
I love what you said, that it's about resistance and identity. Resilience is an active engagement. I think that's really beautiful. Can you also speak to the word Samud, which is a really core concept that guides Palestinian existence and resistance?
I think Samud is being able to speak up. Speaking up as a Palestinian, it's been the most challenging, challenging way of living. Sumud is being able to stand every time someone else tries to silence you. Is being able to heal and also express openly how you're feeling. You're feeling pain because if you see all these women back home, they're always saying, Alhamdulillah, we are okay, we're good. It's being able to rise and say, no, we are not okay. The world needs to hear us. Sumud is about showing that we are vulnerable, we need change, we need to wake up, and being able to allow ourselves that quiet power of returning to yourself after everything is done to break you. To me, Sumud is finding a path of fighting, like I mentioned earlier, existing. Us Palestinians, we talk about so much about existing on this earth because we feel we don't have a platform. We've never been privileged to have it. So Sumud for me is watching my people, hopeful, and also speaking, carrying my mother's voice, my mother's memories, my grandmother's, and not giving up.
Yeah. I mean, your craft, your cultural expression is your voice, right, as a poet. So that's really beautiful. I wonder, Samar, if you can speak to how that same concept of Samud applies through your, tatrizing, make that into a verb, through your craft making, which is, the traditional craft of tatriz.
Yeah, absolutely. What's interesting about the trees is that it wasn't originally meant to be a way of sumud or resistance, because the trees originally wasn't political at all. As I said before, it is really an old art, and it was created by Palestinian women like thousands of years before even the occupation exists and before the state of Israel and everything. And it was simply part of everyday life. Women were stitching together in their villages, in their houses. It was more about celebrating their feminism, their beauty, their culture and society. They were gathering together always and stitching together. Like if you go to a Palestinian wedding, everyone will be wearing tattoos and just like representing themselves and their identity. In all social gathering, like during times of joy and also mourning, they stitch their emotions into that tattoos. And they were, as I said, they were just like celebrating their culture. They were not fighting or resisting anything or anyone. And but of course, over time, when it actually started with the Nakba, as Palestinians were displaced from their villages and from their houses. I think what happened is that everything started to be like threatened to lose, like they lost the land, and I think like the fear of losing other things also that makes the woman keep stitching. So a lot of Palestinian women who have like been displaced from their villages in the Nakba, they just survived with only the only dress that they were wearing. The only thobe was that they kept was the one they were wearing when they left their houses, and because they basically wanted to survive only, and they left everything behind and they escaped, and they could only save one dress, but that couldn't stop them from stitching and keep making other dresses. Even in the tents, even like in the refugee camps, Palestinian women keep stitching. And when I look at this, I just think of oh my God, how strong Palestinian women are. How like what kind of power do they have to keep stitching and doing beautiful things during all these hard times? And I think now the idea of doing tattoos as a form of resistance and also mood is really important because it will help us like keep the uh, traditional tattoos alive. And for me, I also see it as a way of solidarity, like when other people like support Palestinians and let's say like buy tattoos pieces or learn about the trees, or like taking workshops and like listening and learning about Palestinian trees. It's a way of solidarity. And when we see this, it's also encourage us to keep talking about the trees and keep stitching. So for me, I think like women have played really important like role in Palestinian Sumud, and they do it their own way. And there are so many examples of that. One of them is the Intifada thob, when the Israeli army they prevented like the Palestinian flag to be put on the houses, and whenever they see a Palestinian flag, they will just like take it down. And what Palestinian women did is that they created a thob and they stitched the Palestinian flag into their dress. And for me, I saw it like this was their own way of resisting and sumud, and they kept doing this. And like the effort that have been like done by Palestinian women in stitching is it's so great that um, it's important to like carry this and take it to the next generation and to keep like doing and learning about the trees.
Yeah, you just made me kind of have this realization that over the last 2 years of the Israeli genocide against the people of Gaza, you could, it's a really tacky way to say it, but Palestine has sort of been trending. It's really, through the live streaming of a genocide, become a cause that a lot of people around the world have connected to and been able to see the intersectionality between other oppressions in the world, and colonial situations. And I think of all of the things that Palestine has sort of exported culturally, that people have come to know about Palestinian culture over the last 2 years, because that's really when so many people have woken up to the story of Palestine and the situation of Palestine.
Yeah.
It's tatris more than anything else. Like, even though there's so many other amazing forms of cultural expression here, the tatris is really traveled. And you said this, it's engaged people in acts of solidarity through tatris. It's been a really incredible way for
Yeah.
people to connect. And I think, I mean, maybe I've partly answered that, but how has tatris, the work of carrying it on, teaching it, people buying it, become, you talked about like, during the Intifada, how has it recently in the last 2 years of this genocide become even more urgent work for Palestinians to engage in?
Yeah, so like personally and honestly, the ongoing genocide in Gaza was the reason and motivation that led me to found my culture initiative. I had been doing tatreez since like I was I don't remember. I was very young, and I've always done tattoos just as a hobby. But like last year in 2024, I have decided to do something more with tattoos and not just like keep it to myself and stitching at my home alone. I decided to share it with other people. And the urgency comes from the fact that, like, when I think about the genocide and think about Gaza, we are not only losing lives, we're not only losing people or buildings, we're also losing, like, what do I call it, as a cultural memory. And when a lot of like these tattooist artists and old women die, they have so much knowledge and experience and stories and narratives to say about tattooist that have not been documented properly. And uh, we're gonna lose this. And I'm not like only concerned about like losing pieces of tattooist, like a piece of fabric, because it's actually we can make another piece of tattooist. But I'm more worried about the like the people who die, who lose their lives, and they have this all of this knowledge about the trees. Like I have seen a lot of like stories for Palestinian tattoo artists from Gaza who have lost all of they had like amazing place of um teaching tattoos and giving workshops and creating pieces, and it was all destroyed. And they I mean that's like a really big loss. And I remember like also one of the reasons that really like motivates me is when I saw a picture of like a Tatreez piece. I think it was for like the Palestinian map. It was in a red thread, and it was under the rubble, and everything around this piece was like gray and black. It was like a very sad and depressing picture, and I saw this like it's still shining. The color of the red thread is still shining between the rubbles, and I saw that picture, and I was like, I started like I just realized like, oh my God, how like I am sure every Palestinian house has a piece of tattoos, whether it's like a frame, a pillowcase, a dress. And when I think about the amount of buildings and houses and apartments that has been destroyed, I can only think about how many tattoos pieces has been also destroyed in Gaza. And when I like keep thinking about it, and I haven't seen any like efforts for a I don't know some sort of cultural emergency response to um, go and save these Tatreez pieces. And I'm not it doesn't necessarily have to be Tatreez. Like it could be any other like art forms or other crafts or like anything else, like books. I don't know, but I am really more concerned about the trees because like when you look at one piece of the trees, I can only imagine like how much time it took to make. Like months, maybe some pieces take like a year. And also like the process of making this piece, you know, so like if a woman made a dress for herself, she made like take a 1 year. Like you don't know what happened during this year when she was like making the dress, all these emotions, all these memories. Like for example, the one I'm wearing now, like I don't know who the woman who made it, I don't know her personally, but I when I put on the dress, I start feeling like I don't know, like new feelings, different things. I think it's the emotions of the woman who had made the dress. And it is so sad that we're losing a lot of like old soaps, like 50 or 100 years old dresses. And I don't think that this is like it's not a coincidence like that. Okay, Israeli like pumps houses and like we lose a top. I think it's very systematic because there are a lot of like museums, art and cultural centers that has been pumped in Gaza, and I am sure that was done on purpose by the Israeli armies. And for me, I don't have, I can't control this. I can't help like stopping the genocide or stop the bombing. But what I can control and what I can do is um, keep stitching and keep doing this and keep telling other people about it. So, because I feel responsibility, I feel responsible. And this is where the urgency comes from also, that I feel the responsibility to take an action and to do something about the trees because nobody else is doing. And I mean, like nobody. It's like international organizations like UNESCO and the UN, and the fact that Israel is also like has signed the UNESCO agreements, and they should be protecting these data trees. And yeah, I just hope that there should be like more international effort in protecting Palestinian culture and heritage, specifically the trees.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you that there is a very intentional, calculated plan of who and where to go after. One of the first places targeted was the Atfalana workshop and School for the Deaf, where they had incredible embroidery, ceramic workshops, wood workshops, all of the museums. The cultural loss in Gaza is mind-boggling. It is just an part of a much larger ethnic cleansing of Palestinians by attacking culture and cultural institutions. Absolutely. Um, and actually, I think I'll swing back over to Farid for some deeper conversation on this. Because when we started this session today, we talked about the story of Palestinians, your genealogy, your ancient story, and your identity. Everybody always thinks of it like, we need a Palestinian voice if we're going to have an Israeli voice, or an Israeli voice if we're going to have a Palestinian voice. And that's so absurd because Palestinians' story, cultural production, identity is ancient. And it did not emerge alongside of this very recent Israeli colonization of Palestine and Israeli identity in Palestine as the colonizers. But it's an ancient relationship that I have already said is, and we've all, also talked about, is that it's deeply grounded in the relationship to land. And while Palestinians have suffered and survived and created through many foreign military occupations, I can't think of many examples where there was such a deliberate attack against cultural institution and cultural practices. And that destruction that the Israelis rained down on Palestinian heritage and culture is an attempt at destroying identity, right? So, Farid, I know you've done so much work connecting to heritage and agriculture. So, can you talk about how this ethnic cleansing, this destruction of Palestinian culture is also doing the work of trying to appropriate all of that and make claims for Israeli identity? In your own words, you said that they're through the Israeli appropriation, they're making an attempt to fabricate belonging to this land, on this land. That's so powerful. Can you talk about that, please, Farid? Do we have Farid? Maybe Farid is driving through that checkpoint. I think we lost Farid. Okay. Yeah. Well, and welcome to Palestine, everyone. Welcome to Occupation, where you have an appointment, or you're trying to get your child to school, or you're trying to be present on the World YWCA session, and you get stuck because everything is so unpredictable here. And that is the only thing that you can rely on, is the unpredictability of this machine that is the occupation of Palestine. Well, let's see if we can get him back in a bit. Shahid, I would love for you, because you are based in the UK and you talk, you speak with international audiences so much. And surely one of the things that you're doing is, call to action or responding to people who are saying, how can we engage in the Palestinian struggle for liberation and justice? And as a cultural practitioner, somebody who's engaged through poetry, what do you tell people about how they can get involved and support Palestinians in this struggle?
It's amazing, Morgan. It's already, the solidarity is overwhelming. So many people now, like someone was talking earlier about Tatriz and how everyone loves our culture now. It's quite, I even feel they know so much about Palestinian traditions and who we are more than Palestinians at times. But I also would love for organizations to give us the platform so we can speak as well, so we can share our stories. So, because at times I feel we are not heard through. I prefer that our voices at times, not someone else's, not to overshadow, or So I just feel from my experience as a poet, and just seeing how things are evolving, I would love for them to offer us more opportunities, because it's really important to get carried away, and at times it's becoming more of a trend than the actual purpose of what's happening in Palestine. So yes, it's important that we still come together. Our stories matter, and just hearing Farid, and just seeing how resilient, again talking about resilience, it's just so empowering. I feel fueled to keep doing what I want to do, and advocating for Palestinians, because she just given me hope. She kind of showed me, regardless to what our people are going through, they come across with so much hope. So yeah, there's so much to say, there's so much to express. It's just been such a crazy 2 years. I mean, I know this has been years and years. It's not just like you were talking earlier, it's not about 7th of October. This is many years, but people finally are starting to see us. We are more comfortable in the UK as Palestinian to actually speak about myself. I feel more comfortable. I would say I feel safe. Yet there is ups and downs, but I do feel at times I need to still fight to be heard. If that makes sense. There's so many emotions.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you're right. You want to always displace this idea that, it started on October 7th, because that is just absolutely absurd and it is part of a Zionist narrative. But at the same time, you have to acknowledge that there hasn't been a whole lot of space for Palestinians to be heard, to speak, to be listened to, or to perform. Whether it's performing, having your artwork in a museum, or through, Zoom sessions teaching Tatriz, or performing as a poet. Those are pretty new.
Exactly. And also, in some occasions, our work being stolen, Palestinian work. As an artist, we can't protect it. So sometimes, you have a platform where you want to express yourself, but someone else sees there's benefits in our voices and our stories. So it's about trying to find the balance of, yes, I have a platform, and we want to stay positive that there is change, but there's also trouble. We have to be ready for the outcome of speaking out, for standing strong, for resisting, and saying, no, we deserve a platform. We deserve to be heard. Please celebrate us, celebrate Tatriz, celebrate, let's come together. My identity is mine. Let's share, let's celebrate yours. Don't take mine for your own advantage. So we have seen it as Palestinians, not only in the UK, worldwide, where they want to step on us and take our platforms. But at least people are proud of us, right? We haven't experienced that.
I think you're really right about that theft happening internationally. I think Palestinians had experienced that from Israelis for so long, the theft of, culture and I think we have Farid back, so we can actually go back to that cultural appropriation question. Are you with us, Farid? I see him. I'm not sure he has access yet. All right. Well, Samrit, something that you had said you were interested in and taking on is the cultural appropriation.
أنا معكم موجود نعم تفضل.
Yay! أهلا وسهلا يا Farid. Welcome back. Farid, I had posed a question and you were on, just going back to this idea of something you had said that the Israelis engage in cultural appropriation in order to try to fabricate their belonging on this stolen land. And I was asking if you could maybe give us some examples or talk further about the Israeli cultural appropriation of land through culture.
نعم يعني أول شيء أنا بعتذر إني انقطعت عنكم شوي لأن أنا يعني بحاول أمشي بالسيارة. المواطنين في الموجودين في الضفة بيكرهوا الثقافة الفلسطينية ويحتقروا ثقافتنا وفلكلورنا الفلسطيني كفلسطينيين
Apologies,
أصليين
Mrs.
في هذه
Farid Nat,
البلاد،
in
ولكن في نفس
connection
الوقت
is not very
بيحاولوا
stable.
أن يسرقوا ويقلدوا
The
التراث
settlers that
الفلسطيني.
are in the
يعني احنا
West
بنشوف كثير
Bank
فيديوهات للمستوطنين
hate the
في
Palestinians
الجبال
and their culture
بعملوا
and
شكشوكة
identity. However, at the same time,
بيرقصوا
they
على الأغاني
try to
الفلسطينية. حتى
simulate and
الكليبات اللي
imitate
بيعملوها
the
بيستخدموا
cultural
فيها
identity
موسيقى
of the
الفلكلور
Palestinians. For
الفلسطيني،
example,
يعني
we
زي
see videos all
الترويدات
over the
كانوا
place
بيستخدموا
of
الترويدة
settlers
اللي هي
in
الترويدة
the
الفلسطينية،
mountains. They
يعني
are
موسيقى
cooking
فلسطينية
shakshuka
أصلية.
and they are
بيستخدموا
dancing
كمان بروحوا على
the
الآبار
dabke.
المياه
And they are
وبيستخدموا
using the
يعني بيمارسوا
folkloric
نفس الطقوس
music
اللي احنا
of
كفلسطينيين بنعملها.
Palestine,
حتى
such
في
as
طريقة
the Taroid.
حياتهم
It's a
في
Palestinian
البرية بيحاولوا يقلدوا
music,
الفلسطينيين، وكأنه
and it's an
هذا
original
التقليد
one. And sometimes
بدهم
they go
يأخذوا
to the
شرعية من
water
خلاله
wells, and
لوجودهم.
they
يعني هم
practice the same
بيقلدوا
rituals
الناس
that we do as
الأصليين،
Palestinians.
بيكرهوا الناس
Even when they
الأصليين،
are in wilderness, they
بيحاولوا
try to
يطهروا
imitate
الأرض
us.
منهم
And this
ويطردوهم
kind of imitation, they
ويهجروهم،
would like to take a
ولكن يقلدوا أسلوب
legitimacy to their
حياتهم.
own
وكأنه هذا
existence on
التقليد
this land, meaning that
بيعطيهم
they
شعور
imitate you.
بالانتماء،
They
أو إنه
hate you at the
بخليهم
same time. They
وكأنهم هم
try
أصحاب
to
هذا الأرض،
ethnically cleanse
بعطيهم
the
شعور معنوي
territory
إنه
from
هم
you,
جزء من
but
هذا
at the
الأرض،
same time,
ولكن
they
هذا مش
want to
صحيح.
continue to
لأنه
imitate your
هذه الثقافة،
very
هذا
rural
الفلكلور
life, because
والموسيقى
this will give them
والأغاني
a fake
والأكل
feeling of
وحتى
belonging
السلاسل
to
اللي
a
احنا
land,
بنبنيها والشجر اللي
morally
بنزرعه،
speaking, as
احنا
if they are
بنزرعه
part of
بطريقة
this land.
مختلفة.
But this
يعني
is
هذا
all
الإشي
fake. This is
احنا
just an
تربينا
illusion,
عليه. يعني أنا بشم
because
ريحة
this
التراب
culture, these
بعرف إن الأرض
folklores,
عطشانة ولا الأرض
the food,
روياني،
the
هل الأرض بحاجة
music,
لمي
the
ولا مش
dance,
بحاجة من ريحة
the
التراب. أنا من ريحة
necklaces
الهواء
that we do, everything we do in our culture
لما
is
بشم ريحة الهواء بعرف
different.
إنه في
We
مطر
were
جاي بعد
raised on
يومين.
this
يعني صعب إنه
identity. We
يقلدوا
know
هاي
exactly
المشاعر
when the
وهاي
land needs
المعرفة
irrigation and when it
الموجودة
doesn't,
عند الفلسطينيين اللي
from the
اكتسبوها
smell of the
على
soil
مدار
itself,
مئات
from the
السنين.
smell
يعني
of
احنا
the wind itself.
هاي المعرفة
I can
كلها
predict that
أخذناها
the
ليس
rain is
بالقراءة
coming in
والتثقيف
2 days.
بالجامعات.
So they
أنا
cannot
أخذتها من
imitate
أمي،
these
وأمي أخذتها من
emotions and this
أبوها أو
knowledge that
أمها،
is deeply rooted
وتوارثناها
in the
من جيل، وأنا بعلمها
Palestinians
لأولادي. الآن
that
لما
they
بيجي أنا
earned
باجي على
for
القرية
hundreds
بجيب
and
أولادي
hundreds
معي
of years.
وبناتي بعلمهم
We didn't
الزراعة.
learn that through
هلا
books and
بناتي
through
بيعرفوا كل
universities.
شبر
We learned
بالأرض،
that through
كل
my
سنتيمتر
parents
بيعرفوا، كل
and my grandparents and
سلسلة
great-grandparents.
وشجرة
And I'm teaching
وبلوطة.
that also to my own
زعروها يا
children.
مورجان،
When I go
زعرور
to the
عندكم،
village,
زعروها
I
أنتم
take them
كمان
with me. I teach them farming.
قرايبكم. هذا
My
كل
daughters,
الزعرور
for
كلهم
example,
بيعرفوه
they know
الأولاد.
every
أنا ما بعلمهم
centimeter, every
شعر، ما
acre in land.
وكمان
They
في شيء
know
بعد
every
ثاني مهم لازم
tree
نحكي فيه. هذا الثاني كنت أحكي فيه،
uh,
إنه المزارع بحاجة
of
لدعم صموده، بحاجة لدعم صموده. المزارع ما
olives.
حاجة
They all
لإحسان، ما
know it.
بحاجة
They
لشاريتي،
know
ما
how to
بدنا حدا
identify the name of the
يتصدق يعطيه
trees. I
مصاري.
didn't teach them
المطلوب
because
دعم
it's in
المزارع
them.
إن نشتري
And there is
منتجه،
another aspect. The
نخلي
farmer
العمل
needs
الزراعي مجدي
support
للمزارعين.
for
يعني
its
أنا
own
بزرع أرضي
resilience.
وبتعب أنا
He
وأولادي
doesn't need
وبناتي،
charity. We don't want
بالمقابل لازم
empathy or
أحصل على
sympathy
مردود
from
مالي
people
مقابل
by
المنتج
giving
اللي
us
بنتجه.
money.
وما
The
بدي
farmers
حدا يعطيني
need
إحسان، ما
that
بدي حدا
their own
يعطيني
products
تبرعات.
is
أنا بدي
sold
بس
to our
الناس يشتروا
people.
الإشي اللي
I
بشتري
work
ما
with
بكفي
daughters
نحكي عن
to
النوستالجيا، عن
farm my
الحنين
land. At the same
للماضي.
time, I have to receive
ما
back
بكفي نحكي عن
revenue.
الصمود،
And I don't want
عن صمود
anyone to be
الفلسطينيين في
giving me
أرضهم.
charity
مطلوب
and
مبادرات
donations. I
صغيرة
just
لدعم
want people to buy my
المزارعين،
own
دعم
products. It's not
صمودهم من
enough to
خلال
talk
الشراء
about
المباشر من
nostalgia
المزارعين.
here
أنا
and
كمان جزء من
missing
سكن
past.
فلاحين، سكن
It's not enough
المزارعين
that
اللي
we
بيعملوا
speak
في
about the sumud or the resilience. We need the small initiatives to
انك انت
support the
تجيب
farmers,
المزارعين
the
من
small
مناطق
farmers,
بسعر معقول،
by
هذا
buying
كمان
their
دعم
own
للصمود.
products.
يعني الصمود
We are
وليس فقط
part
شعارات
of
نعملها
the
ونحكي فيها
market of the
ونتغنى فيها.
farmers
الناس في المدن عايشين في
that
كوكب
is
مختلف عن
producing
الناس
a
اللي
lot of
عايشين في الريف.
artisanal product that
الناس في
need to
الريف
be
عايشين
sold.
للاستيطان وعايشين الاحتلال يوم بيوم، والصمود بالنسبة لهم وجودهم،
So
مجرد
this is a
وجودهم
way of
بهذه
supporting
القرى
the
وهي
resilience of
المزارع وهذا
farmers.
الصمود.
These are not
الناس في
slogans that we
المدن
should be just
بحاجة
celebrating.
إنهم يروحوا على الريف
People in rural
عشان يفهموا
areas
شو اللي
are
بصير.
living
أنا
every
بعرف،
day under the
أنا بسكن في رام
occupation
الله
and
وبسكن في
settlers'
القرية، أنا بين القرية
violence,
والمدينة،
and their
فعشان هيك عارف
presence on this
إذا أنا
land
بعيش في
is
رام
by
الله فقط ما
itself a
بطلعش من المدينة نابلس ولا رام الله
resilience.
ولا بيت لحم، ما راح
People
أفهم شو
must
بصير.
go to the rural areas to
في
understand
المدينة
what's
إذا بتيجي على
happening.
رام الله
I
بتعيش في
live
رام
in
الله، أنت
Ramallah
ممكن
and
تحس
I
إنك
live
أنت
in a
عايش
village, and that's
في
why
دولة
I can
ثانية في
tell you,
أوروبا،
I know
ممكن
what's happening on the
تحس
ground.
حالك عايش في روما
If I live
ولا
in
في
a village
لندن
and I
وكيف
never go to
شباك في كل
Ramallah
مكان.
or to
ولكن
Nablus,
إذا بتطلع بس
I would
10
never
متر
know what's
خارج مدينة
happening
رام الله رح
around
تشوف
me. If you
المستوطنين،
go to
رح تشوف
Ramallah, you might
الاستيطان، رح
feel
تشوف
that you are
الاحتلال،
living
رح
in a
تشوف معنى
Western
الصمود
country, in
الحقيقي.
Europe,
الصمود
in
الحقيقي إني
UK.
يعني كمان
So
شاهد
if
حكت عن
you
الصمود
only
إنه أنا
go
أعلم ابني على
10
الخارطة إن هي فلسطين، هذا صمود.
kilometers to the
وكمان إني أعلم
villages
ابني أو بنتي يزرع،
outside Ramallah, you will see
يزرع
the
في الأرض،
settlers, you will see
إنه
the
ينجلق
occupation, and
الزيتون.
you will see the
إنه
actual
كمان
meaning
إنه
and the
الزيتون
definition
نفسه، وجود
of
الزيتون
sumud or resilience. Resilience is teaching my own son about where Palestine is on the
أنا
map.
آسف
Resilience is teaching my own son on how
هذه
to
السنة في
plant a
مزارعين
seed
ما
of an
قدروا يلقطوا
olive tree
زيتونهم.
and teaching
هذه
him that
بالنسبة
the
للمزارع النكبة.
existence of an olive tree itself
النكبة
is a
إنك أنت
type of
عندك زيتون
resilience.
بس مش
And
عارف
my
تلقطه، يعني مش
apologies
عارف
that I'm
توصله،
being emotional
إنك
here
أنت تزرع
because
قمح
I'm
ولكن
telling
لا
you
تستطيع
here that when
إنك
my land is
تحصد
stolen
القمح اللي
and my
بتزرعه.
olive trees are taken
هذا اللي
away from
بصير هلا
me,
في فلسطين،
this is
إنه نحن
another
بنزرع
Nakba. It means it's
بس مش
another
عارفين إنه رح
catastrophe.
نقدر نيجي في موسم
And
الحصاد
if I plant
ونحصد
a
بموسم
seed and
الزيتون.
then later on I cannot
أنا
reach to my
متأسف لأنه
land
أنا
and I
كثير
cannot
عرضت،
cultivate my
يعني أنا
own
بالنسبة
wheat,
لي
this is what's
هذا
happening in
مؤلم
Palestine
إني
because
بحكي عن
we
إنه
are
المزارع بيزرع
putting
وما
the
بيقدر
seed,
يقطف. هذا
but when
قمة
the season comes
العار
to
في
cultivate it,
تقاليد
we are not
الفلاحين،
capable of
إنك
doing
أنت
that. My
تزرع وما تحصد.
apologies that I'm being
يعني
really
هذا أكثر إشي
emotional
سيء
because
ممكن
it's
يصير معك في
painful for
حياتك.
us to be talking about
النكبة
that because I'm a
المستمرة هي
farmer
مش بس
myself
القتل
and I
أهميته
cannot
في غزة،
cultivate
القتل
my
كمان
own
إنه أنا ما بقدر أوصل أرضي.
my own farm.
يعني أنا بشوف شجرة
So
الزيتون
if you
حاملة
plant
حب
seeds and you
زيتون
cannot
في عليها
cultivate them,
يعني
it's the worst thing
كثير
that
من
could happen to you. The killing
من
machine
حب
is
الزيتون،
not
بس
the
مش
only
قادر
way
أوصل
of
لقطها.
occupation.
إن أنا زرعت
Occupation is
حقل
when I
قمح
cannot
ولكن
reach
مش
my
قادر
land.
ألقط، مش قادر أوصل
I
وأحصده.
see that the olive tree is
وهذا
carrying
كله
many
بحاجة لعمل جماعي،
olives,
بحاجة لدعم. المزارع
but
بحاجة لدعم كمان
unfortunately I
مرة.
cannot go
إحنا
to
مش
pick them
بحاجة
up.
لدعم مالي، إحنا
I
بحاجة
planted a full field
لتعزيز
of wheat
صمودنا
and
من
I cannot
خلال
cultivate
إنه
it.
الناس يجوا يشوفونا، يجوا يشوفونا في
This
الريف،
all
يجوا
needs a
يساعدونا في
collective
نوصل
work, a
الزيتون.
support, because the
إنه
farmers, like I
كمان
said, they need
الفلاح يقدر يبيع
support. We don't
المنتجات اللي
want,
بتنتجها
again, we don't
بسعر
want
معقول، بسعر
charity.
يحفظ كرامته
We want you to
ويكافئ الجهد
reinforce
اللي
our resilience
بيعملوه.
by seeing us, by
المزارعين
saying that
ما
we
بكفي
exist,
نبيعهم شعارات إنه
that we
لازم
need
توصلوا له.
help when there's the season of cultivating
المزارعين
the oil
والفلاحين
and
بيواجهوا
the
عملية
olives,
تطهير
and then
عرقي على
the
الأرض،
farmers will need to sell
تطهير
his
جسدي.
products
المعركة
and we
معركة
need to
جسدية
recognize these
يومية،
efforts.
كل يوم
It's
في
not enough for
احتكاك
us to write slogans
احتكاك جسدي. احنا
because
بنحكي عن
farmers are
صراع
facing
بالايدين.
a
يعني احنا كفلسطينيين ما
systematic
عندنا اي
ethnic
سلاح، ممنوع نحمل
cleansing
سلاح،
on
حتى
the
السكينة
ground.
ممنوع نحملها.
It is a
بينما المستوطن معه
bodily
كل انواع السلاح،
struggle on a
عنده
daily
درونز
basis. I'm
وعنده
talking about physical
بنادق وعنده
violence,
جيش
people that are
كامل،
fighting
ترسانة
together using
عسكرية
their
ضخمة
hands
بتحميه.
because we
بينما
cannot even
المزارع متروك
carry a
لوحده
knife,
في
let alone
مقاومة
a weapon. But
التطهير
every
العرقي
settler has a
ومقاومة
drone, has a weapon in his
الإبادة
hands.
والتهجير
He has rifles
وطرد
and he
الأرض،
has a
المزارع من
whole
أرضه.
arsenal of
فهم
the
أنا بدي
Israeli
أرجع للنقطة
army that is
الأساسية
protecting him.
إنه الاحتلال ليس فقط يسرق
Unfortunately, a
الأرض، بل
farmer, a
يسرق
Palestinian
التراث
farmer,
والفولكلور
is facing
والتطريز
this ethnic
والأغاني
cleansing and the
وأسلوب الحياة.
displacement from his
بسرق
own
أبار
land
المي، حتى
without any
أسماء
type of
أسماء
protection.
الأماكن. يعني
So I go
أسماء
back to the
القرى
point that
يتم
the
تحريفها
occupation is
بطريقة أو بأخرى.
stealing your land,
يعني
your
اللبن الشرقية
music,
بصير
your
اسمها لبونة. بتكون
life,
البلد اسمها مجدل، المجدل
the
بسموها
wells of the
مجدليم.
water,
يعني
the
بيسرقوا
names
أسماء
of the
الأراضي
villages.
والجبال والعيون
Sometimes they
المياه
are changed.
والآبار والوديان، وبسموها بأسماء
For
توراتية،
example,
بيدعوا إنه هذه أسماء توراتية.
Laban becomes
اللي
Labuna, or
بينسرق مش بس
Majdal
الأرض،
becomes
اللي بينسرق
Majdalin. So
الثقافة
basically, they steal even
والتراث
the names of the villages
والفولكلور
themselves,
والأغاني
and then they
الشبابة
twist their
والدلعونة
creation in order to be
والبطريز
more
بنسرق وحتى
Jewish.
الصمود
And they're saying
وطريقة
that
الحياة
it's
اللي
according
احنا
to their
بنعيشها هون
holy book.
بيسرقوها وبيحاولوا
And what you
يقلدوها.
steal is not only
اللي أنا
land, it's
بأكد
also
عليه إنه
folklore,
إحنا
it's
صامدين في هاي
music, the
الأرض
dalaona, which is a
وباقيين
type
مش
of
بالشعارات
dancing,
بالعمل.
the
أنا
tatrees
ما
or
عمري ما
the
سمعت بناتي حكي شعر عن
embroidery,
الأرض وأهمية الأرض.
everything.
أنا
They're
بجيب
stealing
بناتي كل
everything.
ويكند على
What
البلد
I
في
would
آخر
like to
الأسبوع
reaffirm here is
وبنزرع
that
مع
we are
بعض.
steadfast in our
بشوفهم
work.
شجر
We
الزيتون
are
وهو لما
continuing our
بنزرعه
work not through
غرسي وبيكبر
slogans,
بيكبر
but through
وبصير شجرة
action.
زيتون
I've never
بتطرح
told my
زيتون.
daughters
بنزرع مع
poetry.
بعض
Every
القمح
time at the end of
بيعرف
the week,
بكل
I take
أسماء
them to the
الأراضي
village and
وبيعرف
we plant the
القصص
seeds, and they
والذكريات مع
see
الأرض. هذا هو
the
المطلوب
trees of the olives, and they
المطلوب
see it with their own eyes how
ممارسة
it's
العمل
growing and
الزراعي
growing in order to give them
وممارسة
olives.
التراث
We
الفلسطيني
also
ممارسة
plant the
التراث
seeds
التراث
of
مش بنحط
wheat.
في
They know
المتحف
the names of the
التراث
lands. They know the
بنعيشه
stories
هاي
and the
موجود في الريف بيطلع من
memories.
رام الله
This is what
بس
we
10
need
كيلو
to
متر
have. We
برا
need
رام
to
الله راح
continue
تلاقوا التراث موجود
practicing the
والفولكلور
farming
موجود والأغاني موجود والتطريز
activity
موجود
and
والناس عايشين
practicing
الحياة
our
الفلسطينية الأصلية
heritage.
بمنغصات
Heritage is
وبمشاكل ومع
not
احتلال
something you place in a
ولكن هذا
museum.
موجود المطلوب ما بدنا فولكلور في المتاحف ما
If you
بدنا
go
صمود ما
10
بدنا شعر
kilometers
على
away from
المسرح
Ramallah, you will
في قصر
see
رام الله
everything
الثقافي
related to our
وفي شوارع رام الله
heritage,
ما
the
بدنا حديث
music, the
مثقفين
folklore,
ناس
the
مثقفين
actual
بيحكوا
life,
في المكفوف
the
والشبابات في رام
original
الله
rural
على
life of
أهمية الصمود
Palestinians.
ودعم
Like I said, we
التراث
don't want this heritage to be
ومواجهة
placed and
التطهير العرقي
displayed in a
بدنا
museum
تواجد
or in a
جسدي
theater.
وأنا هذا الحكي للفلسطينيين
We don't want
وكمان
that. We don't want
أصدقائنا
those
اللي بيسمعونا من
intellectual
الخارج
people that are talking
إحنا
about the
كفلسطينيين
importance
بنحب
of
تيجوا تزورونا
resilience and supporting
أنا مزرعتي
heritage
مفتوحة
and to
وبيتي
face
مفتوح
ethnic
كل سنة
cleansing without any
شهر
action
10 في
on the ground.
أكتوبر
We
إحنا
have to
بنبدأ
translate
موسم
our words
الزيتون
into
كل
action.
سنة بيجي عندي أصدقاء من كل دول
And those who are
العالم
listening
من
to us from
أوروبا من
abroad,
أفريقيا من
as
أمريكا
Palestinians, we would
بيجوا
like
الناس
to visit
بيساعدونا
us. My farm is
بتقدروا
open
تيجوا
to all of
تتلقطوا
you.
زيتون بدون ما تعرضوا نفسكم
In
للخطر
October, we
يعني
start
بتيجوا على
the
مناطق
season
آمنة
of olives, and every
فوجودكم
year,
فلسطين
friends from
زيارتكم
all
لنا
around the
مهمة
world,
جدا
from Europe,
كل
from
هذول الناس
America,
اللي
from the
في
United
الخارج بيسألوا
States, they
ايش
all
نقدر
come to
نعمل
help us.
بتقدروا تيجوا تزورونا بتقدروا تيجوا
You can pick
تساعدونا
up the
بتقدروا تيجوا
olives
تشوفوا
without
تعيشوا
being
الحياة
under
تيجوا
danger
تاكلوا
because you will
المسخن
be in safe zones.
والمكلوبي
So
الفلسطينية
your
على
presence in
أصلها تحت
Palestine, your
الزيتون
visit to
يأكلون
Palestine is
الزيتون
of an imperative
في أشياء
necessity.
كثير حلوة في فلسطين بنقدر
You can
نشاركها
come and
معكم
visit us,
فلسطين مش بس
help us,
حرب
live
وقتل
our life,
ودمار ومنع
eat the
تجول
masakan, which is a chicken
وتشيك
plate.
بوينتس
Sit
واحتلال
under the
فلسطين
olive
فيها كثير
trees,
أشياء حلوة
under the
بنحب نشاركها
shadows
مع
of
العالم
these
أنا
olive
دائما
trees.
بكون حزين لما
Palestine
بروح بسافر
is
برا
not a
البلاد
mere
بس الإشي اللي بنحكي عنه
representation
كفلسطينيين
of a
للخارج
curfew,
بس عن الاحتلال بينما في
checkpoints,
عنا فولكلور
war,
كثير احنا بنحب نفتخر
destruction,
فيه في
occupation.
عنا طقوس
Palestine
دينية من
possesses
كنعانية من أيام
great
الكنعانية لسه
potentials. I'm
بنمارسها
always
نحن
sad when I go
كشركة في عنا
abroad.
أغاني في عنا
The
أمثال في
only
عنا
thing
قصص
when
شعبية
we
في
talk
عنا
about Palestine is
فن في عنا
occupation.
تطريز في
However,
عنا
we have a
رسم
folklore
في
that we
عنا
are
موسيقى
proud of.
يعني كثير
We
حلوة بنحب
have
نشاركها مع
canonic
العالم إذا بتيجوا عنا
religious
تزورونا
rituals that
أنا
we have been
بوعدكم راح تشوفوا
practicing
كل
for
هاي الأشياء
thousands of
وتذوقوها
years.
وتعيشوها
We have proverbs, we have
Beautiful, Fareed. Yes.
cultural
I have so many thoughts that
crafts
I would love to say right
such
now,
as
but we have very
drawing
little time,
and
and I want to
singing.
bring Samar in.
If you
So I
come and
just want
visit
to
us, I
say
promise you
that
that you will see all of that. Thank you very
I
much,
often
Farid.
think that people can't really process a lot of the things that Fareed said right now because they can't imagine the landscape of Palestine. And I mean that like the physical, agricultural, wild landscape. And if they can't start with that in their imagination, then they can't imagine also how Palestinians have thousands of years of culture and beauty and life on this land, and that it shouldn't just be about what has been imposed on Palestinians newly with this vicious colonization by Israel. That is imposed on Palestinians, but that is not the story of Palestine or Palestinians. And so many amazing things that you just said in there, Farid. Thank you so much for that. Samar, speaking about, I mean, and this will have to be the last question because we're going to have to wrap up, but speaking about, cultural appropriation and the way that the Israelis despise the natives, they despise Palestinians and Palestinian culture while also simultaneously trying to appropriate. And that used to be kind of a uniquely Israeli colonizer issue, but you're seeing more and more cultural appropriation also outside of Palestine, especially in fashion. Can you just take one quick minute to respond to, Palestinian costume and cultural appropriation as part of the
Yeah, absolutely. And Farid has like said amazing things about how Israel is trying to steal everything. And I just want to say that they can steal things like objects, like everything, but they can't steal the story and the narrative and the history. And they will never do. And they have tried with Tatriz, but they failed. They tried to claim that it's their own Tatriz. If you fly through Ben Gurion Airport, you will see a shop with Tatriz saying that it's Israeli Tatriz and Israeli traditions. So people, when they like international people, when they come visit and they go through the Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv, this is like the first thing they see, and they think this is Israeli customs. And a lot of Israeli fashion designers have tried to use tatriz on like modern dresses, and they said it's Middle Eastern inspired embroidery. They didn't even mention the word Tatris or the word Palestinians. And they have tried a lot, but as I always say, we're not like fighting to prove that Tatris is Palestinian. It is 100% Palestinian, and nobody in the world can like question this or argue with this. We are stitching and talking about Tatris just to keep what our mothers and grandmothers has been doing all over the years, and to just like as I always say, to keep it alive. So yeah, there are a lot of culture appropriation that is happening around the world. People like using Palestinian Tatreez patterns without how do you say it, like crediting or like giving the credit to the Palestinian embroidery. But at the same time, we should also mention the opposite of culture appropriation. I don't know if it has a word. The effort that other people are also doing to try help Palestinians to protect their cultural heritage and to like preserve the trees. And I would just like take a moment also to talk about my upcoming project that I am doing with the Australian nonprofit. It's Made in Palestine in Australia. I have been doing a series of Tatreez workshops online, and now we are planning to do a series of Tatreez exhibitions from Bethlehem to Melbourne to different cities in Australia, with all participants in Bethlehem and in Australia who have joined my workshops and learned how to stitch, to submit a piece of their work to participate in this exhibition and try to connect these two populations who are interested in like learning about each other's and supporting Palestinians. So this is for me is like the best way that people could like support Palestinians and especially Tatreez. Um, the exhibition is called Tatreez Overseas, which like perfectly describes that Tatreez is. I've been trying to like talk about Tatreez to also international audiences and to, as Farid says, to show the people that we have like beautiful things. It's not only like war, and it's not only like scary things that's happening. People are afraid to visit Palestine sometimes, but we need to show them the beautiful side of Palestinian culture and heritage. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I think Farid said something else that we would probably all agree with, and it's something I've said hundreds of times on Instagram Reels, which is that people should visit. People are welcome to visit. My couch is also open for people to come and join us in the olive season while we're harvesting, or just to come and learn Palestine, to eat Palestinian food and partake of Palestinian hospitality and see a totally different side, a true side, an authentic side of Palestine that you are denied internationally from seeing. And I imagine Samar, you will also join in that call, telling people, like, come and experience Palestine. And this is part of also what you can do internationally. You can come, you can bear witness and go back to your communities, but you can also stand in solidarity as an ally here in Palestine by literally just experiencing life here and saying to the people in the community here, we see you. I mean, that's been one of the most amazing things over the last few years is seeing that there is a space for your voice and that you and your work can be seen as a Palestinian. Wouldn't you guys agree? I mean, you feel seen more and more, yes? Samar, Shahid,
Yeah.
you did? I mean, you've had a platform for, I think the last few years as you've been a poet. That's
I'm just speechless because they make me so proud, and I look up to them, to Samar and Farid, also to you, Morgan. It's amazing just listening to everyone and their stories. I feel empowered, honestly. Just when Farid is mentioning the Msakhan and the Maqlube, it's just home. I'm at home right now in that environment. It's so beautiful. Obviously, there's something about us so threatening, and that we don't have weapons, but it seems, and they have all the weapons in the world, but somehow we are so dangerous to them. Our existence, our voices, whether it's poetry, whether it's just being alive, it's just because based on, look at, everybody has a beautiful story to share, and it's quite emotional and overwhelming, and it's so powerful. And I feel like you said, Morgan, as well, if we have a platform, we can make a change, and the change doesn't come while you stand alone. It comes with unity, solidarity, together, through creativity, through art, through just existing together. Thank you, Morgan, and everyone for offering this session today. This is another form of resistance.
Yes, absolutely. I think you're right. You as Palestinians are just the most threatening thing in the world to a Zionist narrative that claims that this was a land without a people. And that is why they are so invested in the erasure of Palestinian culture, because it is, it is the expression of Palestinian identity. So you hit the nail on the head with that one, Shahid. Yeah, what a powerful session this has been, everyone. Thank you so much for your contributions.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Morgan.
And thank you to YWCA, World YWCA, for this session, putting this together today and allowing us all to be here.
Thank you.
I think we have a few minutes left. Maybe we can take a question. I'm not sure where we see those questions. Or if we just wind down with that and say thank you. Waiting for guidance. Well, does anybody have any last words that they would like to? We have 3 minutes remaining. Farid or Samar, do you want to?
Another thank you, maybe.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's it then today. Yeah.
شكرا
Farid?
لكم.
Yeah,
شكرا على الاستضافة، وأنا سعيد إن كنت بتمنى لو في وقت أطول نحكي عن الثقافة الفلسطينية والفولكلور والتراث الفلسطيني، ولكن الوقت ضيق، بإمكان يعني أنا بكتب مقالات عن
Thank you
الفولكلور
for
الفلسطيني
hosting
وبحب
me,
أشاركها معكم
and
كمان.
I was really pleased to be part of this
Yeah,
session,
shukran
and I
Iktia
hope that we
Makloum.
had more time to talk about the
We
Palestinian
have
folklore
Mira with
and
us who would
heritage,
like
and I
to
know
speak.
that it
She
was a
is
third
the board
time I write
president, so we
articles
will
about
give
the
her the
Palestinian
floor.
folklore that I would like to share with you. Thank you very much for you, Farid.
Thank you, Morgan, and thank you for all the speakers. Very enlightening. I cannot agree more with you that art is a very strong expression of identity, history, culture, everything. And I think that's where and why the Israelis feel so threatened, with the Tatris, with our, songs, with our writings, with our poetry. It threatens them, yes, because it also reminds them that we've existed for thousands of years. By the way, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Mira Rizek, and I'm the president of the World YWCA. And I'm so happy to see you, and especially women, because this platform is meant for women to express, to speak out, and to engage. This this series is part of our Peace and Justice program, whereby we try to promote justice issues for women in conflict areas. We focused a lot on Palestine this year. We've had at least 3 sessions on Palestine this year. And of course, due to the war in Gaza, the genocide actually in Gaza, we wanted to highlight, the issues in Gaza. I also agree with you and say that, women can be so powerful by just sharing the stories and the history. I've witnessed that. I've lived that through the YWCA of Palestine, where I was working before becoming president. We have a very, very interesting project called Fabric of Our Lives. I don't know if you've heard of it or seen it, but it is a dolls project where we have produced dolls, and the embroidered on the dolls represents dresses of villages that have been demolished in 1948.
Wow.
And every doll has a story. Every doll comes from a different village, and that doll tells the story of how she fled from her village in 1948 during the massacres, during the war. And then we actually took a picture of these old women's actual dresses and reproduced them on the dolls. The mold of the dolls is olive wood, which stands for peace. And we have been actually promoting this project to promote women's history, to promote women's culture, to promote, the story of women. But the beautiful thing about it is, despite all the very sad stories they tell, at the end they say, we still have hope. And we will continue to exist. And if our children and grandchildren and generations to come, and they will always tell the story of Palestine. So thank you, all of you, for telling us all your stories, because they are the stories that again and again remind us that we exist, we will continue to exist. We have wonderful resilience as a Palestinian society, and I think the world, for the first time, saw us and learned the lesson that the Palestinians have been the best example of resilience, of honor and dignity. And you today reaffirmed that. So thank you very much for sharing with us this wonderful stories of yours. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you,
Thank
Mira.
you, Mira.
And thank you to everyone. I think that's it for our session today. Thank you for everyone watching and sharing. Free Palestine.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can I do this?
Woman power.
Yeah. Thank you.